Okay, so I'm going to go over 600s, 1000s, the super sport class of bikes. What makes these bikes these bikes? What makes them more dangerous? Why do people wreck on them more often? And I don't think it's the engine as much as that doesn't help things. I think it's a multiplier of what's more commonly the issue with these bikes. And it's a lack of understanding of the actual ergonomics of them themselves and why they're set up the way they are and what the benefits and how they're supposed to be ridden. So hopefully this will give someone a slightly different perspective than 600s are these death machines, 1000s are these death machines, horsepower equals speed at which you die, all that nonsense that people like to talk about. Because really these bikes are not that hard to ride in a straight line around town. That's way overplayed. Anyway, ergonomics of a super sport. What makes something a super sport versus a sport, standard sport, say CBR 650R, Ninja 650, or a naked MT, any of the line of MTs, the KTM's whole lineup, BMW R1250, any of those. What makes a super sport so unique? And there's two parts to it. And clip-on handlebars. So right here, if you can, hopefully my camera's set up properly. If you can see right here, these are clip-on handlebars. They clip onto the forks. These are set very, very low on the bike. So from this perspective, and I think this better shows it than what most people try to just say that it's a leaned over position. If you look at where my hand is relative to where I'm sitting, my hand and my leg, my actual hip joint itself, are dead level. And this is on a Gixxer, which is one of the more comfortable riding 1000s. And they're all within a half inch of each other, really. If you ever go take a line and run from here to here, it's just that an inch from when you're in this leaned over position feels drastic. Anyway, so pay attention to how flat this line is right here. That is a massive difference versus your standard naked bike where everything, your hands are way above where your actual hips are. So your hips and your hands are in line on a super sport. The other big key here is your actual foot pegs themselves. These are, hopefully this will show, way farther. So if we look again to where, so everyone sits differently. This is one of the most debated things on the planet. Rear peg, no matter what position your ass is in, rear peg is going to be behind your actual hip. It just will. So if you look at it, so here's my leg, right? We come up here, and this will show the actual kind of leg joint position. And notice how what's unique about this versus a naked is you're able to push off this peg, and that is huge. That's one of the most important parts of super sports. And now a lot of manufacturers are going towards trying to lower the foot pegs because it's more comfortable. But no matter, like Ducatis feel extremely low to me, but they're going lower. They're still getting the same clearance, but they are still staying rearward. You will not find a super sport that has mid-set pegs. And the reason for that is because the ergonomics and the reasoning behind it being behind you are so important. So, what makes these ergonomics more dangerous to someone who is new? Clip-on handlebars. You have to clip-on handlebars and the rear set pegs. These are not like riding a cruiser. These are not like riding a naked. You can get away with being lazy on a naked or a cruiser. You cannot get away with being lazy on a super sport. Your abs, your back, and your legs are what are holding you up on this bike. So if I'm leaned over, and I talk about this a lot, but One of the most important things when you're riding a bike is that your arms have total flexibility and movement in all directions. If there's anything stiff at any one point, you're losing control from that. With these handlebars being lower, this takes a level of fitness that the other bikes just don't. So what happens, and this is very, very common with a huge chunk of riders, is they are in a push-up position on their bike. They have their elbows locked because this takes less muscle rather than holding themselves up with their abs and back. So they're in a push-up position and they have terrible fine-tuning with their actual handlebars because of this. When you're in this push-up position, if you try and move and keep your elbows locked and see how much you can move your handlebars and how effectively it goes, it's not going to go great. You have to squeeze the tank, and your hands are just right here. I don't have to hold on to them. This is your position on a Supersport. This is what I tell people is, if you're going to ride a Supersport for the first time, don't go on it and get in a push-up position. Go and put your fingers like this around the handlebars and then just look forward. This is what you should feel like on this bike. And it's tiring. It's something that you have to kind of build up to. Because it's a weird position that you probably haven't trained, no matter what you do in the gym, to just sit in this kind of weird position with your head up like that. Second part here. So we have stiff hands. This causes stiff steering. This causes stiff reactions. This causes bad reactions. Bad reactions lead to disrupting the suspension. Disrupting the suspension leads to breaking traction. Breaking traction equals, panicking, really doing something wrong. And now you're either losing a front, you're losing a rear, and you're going down. That's the majority of wrecks on these bikes. They're not these unwieldy. It's very rare that someone actually loops out on one of these things. These are, the engines themselves are not what make these things so scary. It's just a complete lack of understanding on the ergos on them. The second part here, and this is something that I've talked about with people, but I've never actually seen discussed on another video or even online really, is the importance of these rear set pegs. So with the rear set pegs, what rear set pegs do is they give you the ability to push forward. So if I'm someone who sits close to my tank, like I do, I am able to push forward. So if the bike, I am accelerating hard, I am not using the handlebars to pull backwards. Because again, the more strength I'm using in my arms to hold on, the less control I have over the bike itself. So if you're someone who push-up position, hands like this, your wrist is in a bad position, and then it starts to pull, you are now pulling up on the handlebars. What you should be doing is natural, happy position, open the throttle, and what's keeping you on that bike is your legs. So you're actually squeezing the bike and you are pushing through the balls of your feet. If you're not pushing through the balls of your feet, you are not riding properly. That is how, that's why these rear set pegs are so important, is they give you the ability to push and to stay where you need to be. Because with bikes that are as powerful and have the kind of exponential growth in their speed that these engines make, you sliding backwards and then it's starting to really ramp into the power band and you start sliding, your front wheel is lighter already, and now here's you pulling on the handlebars, pulling up, while also sliding back with your ass, causing weight to go backwards. Your front end is going to get real squirrely real quick, and you may not realize it until something bad happens. This is what causes, I think, the majority of tank slappers. When you go watch a video and they go accelerate, their wheel looks like it never left, and then all of a sudden things just go crazy. It's because they accelerated, they slid, and they pulled up all at once, and that caused just enough of a disruption on that front to cause things to go wonky. Second part here, and this is where the clip-ons, really important to understand the lower position and how much stronger the rest of your body needs to be able to effectively ride these things. Is, let's say, and this is, we're not MotoGP, we're not going from 180 down to 80 while also leaning over to 60 degrees. We're on the streets, we're riding, you know, whatever. Even if you're being stupid and you're going 120, uh-oh, car just pulled out in front of me, I have to slam it. You have to be able to pull this brake in, brace yourself, grip this tank like your life depends on it, and not put weight up on the handlebars. It's going to be unavoidable to a point. The harder you brake, but the less you put on it, the better. Because again, you're now disrupting the suspension again. You're putting weight forward. On a Supersport with the Ergos, you need to be driving. Your weight needs to be doing its absolute best to be staying within the center of the bike. If you're not doing that, you're setting yourself up for a potentially really, really bad situation. Hopefully that gives a slightly different perspective on this whole discussion.